So at this particular time, that piece does lead us to another conversation around the economy.
Yeah.
All right, and how the incoming president can take advantage of international trade to try and foster economic growth in the country.
Yeah. I think that's critical. And you see, when investors, when countries, when various stakeholders are looking at where they should invest, they consider a number of different factors, right?
All right.
And one of the factors that they consider, sometimes over and above how much return they'll actually generate on investment, is stability of that particular environment and what's known as political risk, all right? So what's the risk that I'll go and invest in a particular jurisdiction, then because of political factors, I end up losing out what I invested. Either it gets nationalized or there's unrest or something like that. Now, we have at Zambia, we made a very serious statement in that the pinnacle or the apex, the most critical aspect of political risk usually is around government transitions, okay? And moving from say opposition to from a ruling party, an incumbent to an opposition or a different political party. That is where we often observe the greatest extent of political risk in terms of either disruption to the country or some sort of chaos, right? But Zambia on 3 occasions has demonstrated that we are able to do this. So what message does this send to someone who's sitting in New York, who has a perception about the risk in Africa? What message does it send to someone who's sitting in Sydney, Australia, wanting to invest? They say this is a country that is stable. So it can have its economic challenges, it can have its economy that is currently in default, but there is stability. And we've often seen significant investments in countries that are less politically stable than ours. So how much more should we be able to do as a country? So that, I think, is a very serious statement, and one that as a country I would expect us to leverage on, and is also contributing to some of the sentiment and goodwill that we're seeing in terms of decisions that are being made about us as a country. So that's point number one. We have made a statement, okay? We can talk about political risk, but this is the ultimate statement: a peaceful transition from one government to the next. So that sets a benchmark, or a sort of a foundation on which you then start to build. And then going on from there, because your question is about international trade, there's a lot of conversation about how we start to move into the value addition arena with regards what we produce as a country, be it in the mining sector, be it in the agricultural sector, be it looking at how we enhance our manufacturing, and the conversation around we are strategically positioned as a country, so how do we leverage our position to basically access various markets, okay? So when you think about it in that perspective, you then say to facilitate or to enable such trade, to enable such growth in the local economy, to take advantage of opportunities in our region and beyond, international trade is going to be critical. It's going to be critical to talk about the sort of agreements that we have, whether multilateral or bilateral. It's going to be important to talk about the sort of incentives that we have, so that we have the right level of investment in the country, which then allows us to produce and then export into other countries. And the same goes for importing as well, the terms and conditions that are ascribed to that sort of economic engagement. So it's a big deal, it's a big opportunity, we believe. We've seen a lot of conversations about markets like the DRC, for example, perhaps a bit more structure there to be able to take advantage of such opportunities. And the other aspect, which I think is also quite key, is that we talk a lot about the debt situation in Zambia, right? That Zambia has defaulted, we borrowed, we invested in infrastructure. That is one issue, all right? The conversation needs to also move to, we invested in all this infrastructure. How are we going to optimize it? How are we going to get the most out of what we've invested in? Yeah. We can have a conversation about, did we spend the right amount of money in it? Was it all economically viable? But it's there, all right? We have a much better road network. We have ports of entry like the new airports, and all sorts of different investments that have been made. So as we're talking about the using exports, using international trade to actually help the country get back onto its feet. We also need to look at how do we also optimize the assets that we've invested in so that it starts to contribute positively to the economy as a whole, but to the debt service as well. So those are the key issues. But the ultimate is the statement that as a country, we are stable, and that for me is also quite critical in terms of attracting additional investment into this country.
I'm glad you brought in the issue of